Near-death experiences are fascinating. They provide a glimpse into what may happen after we die and deeply affect the people who have had them. In this episode, we'll talk with a woman who has felt their profound effects by being in close proximity to experiencers. Welcome to the PEEP Podcast, episode 100. I'm your host, Nicole Maroc, and I'm grateful you're here. The two big ideas behind the PEEP Podcast are to show that the paranormal is more normal than most people think, and to connect the science to the psi, including ESP, psychokinesis, and intuition. In this episode, you'll meet Susan Amsden, the business manager for International Association for Near-Death Studies, IANDS for short, and hear about her search for understanding. But first, a quick update. If you received my newsletter last week but didn't read it, you may want to open it. I shared how to win an advance copy of Daughter of the Mystic Moon before it's even launched on Kickstarter. One lucky subscriber will win in a drawing on May 12th, so if you're interested, follow the instructions in the email. If you're not on my email list and you want to be, go to peeppodcast.com and click on the button at the top of the page that says Sign Up for the Newsletter. Back to this episode's topic, near-death experiences. We've covered NDEs in 4 episodes so far. Episode 12, Rick Noriega, Early Childhood NDEs and Other Paranormal Experiences. Episode 26, Robert and Susan Mays discuss near-death experiences. Episode 27, From Near-Death Experiencer to Energy Healer. Episode 72, John Mathis, George Carlin, St. Michael, and New Directions. Each conversation was unique and enlightening, and this episode is no different. It's only fitting to cover one of my favorite topics in episode 100. Susan Amsden is the business manager for the International Association for Near-Death Studies. She has listened to and talked with thousands of people who have called into the office with their NDE stories. She facilitates monthly NDE meetings in Durham, North Carolina. Susan longed to understand death and the afterlife since early childhood. In her recent book, NDEs Unveiled, an insider's look into the mysteries of near-death experiences, she shares many captivating stories of NDEs. Is there a heaven? What will it be like on the other side? Is there a God who will greet me? Who judges the life review? The book discusses the challenges of near-death experiencers and what family and loved ones face when someone close to them has an NDE. It explores what it means for humanity for this phenomenon to come into the wider public awareness at a time when we are searching for answers to our greatest challenges. If we've proven that life continues after the body stops functioning, we will change the world by changing how we understand ourselves as spiritual beings. NDEs give us a new spiritual paradigm. Let's dive in with Susan. Hi, Susan. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great, Nikki. How are you?
I'm doing so well, and I'm so grateful that you are here today to talk with me about your new book and IANDS. And this is one of my favorite subjects, and you are the interview for episode 100 of the PEEP podcast.
Ooh,
so
wow.
This is special in so many ways to me.
Great.
First,
For me too.
I appreciate that. First, I want to get started with, how did you first get interested in near-death experiences?
Yeah, I actually had first heard and read like Dr. Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life, but I had seen some experiencers, mostly Tom Sawyer, on the Donahue show, the Phil Donahue show that's going way back. And I could not get enough. I was so entranced by, what they had to say. But back then, it was really difficult to find any information about near-death experiences. And so I ended up going through a period of my life where I started having panic attacks, and they feel like you're going to die because you have no control over them. You don't know when they're going to happen. But I had a lot of things happen during that time. I mean, I had had a miscarriage, and the panic attacks started after that. I felt like I had reached the pinnacle of my job at that time. And I just felt like there were some cracks in my marriage. And so, yeah, it felt like death, 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 as if I was staring that in the face. And then I heard my mother's voice say, Susan, like like a parent would yell at a child. But she had died in 1964 when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And this is when I was already married, and I had not heard from her, since I last saw her, in the casket stuff. But that funeral scared me so bad of death and dying. And yeah, so but I didn't know how to deal with it. Like back then it was considered, the less you tell children, the better. Don't, tell them what's going on. And there was a lot, because couple of months before she died, she was in the hospital on morphine. They'd been treating her for ulcers. I mean, I only learned this stuff later, years later. And yeah, it turned out it was pancreatic cancer. So back then they just pretty much close somebody up and start giving them morphine. But my brother and I were living alone for a week because nobody knew that we were on our own. And we started running out of food. And so my brother got the courage up at the end of the week to go and take a taxi. He was trying to gather some money because we didn't have hardly any money back then, because a woman couldn't hardly make a paycheck, that was worth supporting, having a place to live and supporting the food and everything else and children. So we took this taxi to a nearby hospital, and it was late at night on Friday night. And pretty soon, the authorities were like, what is this kid coming? He was 13 years old then. And they're like, what is this kid coming late at night, to find his mother when, so anyways, that's how the authorities found out about it. But back then, at that point, she had been going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so one guy took me and one guy took my brother. And so for a couple of months, we lived separate. And until then she died, and my brother could finally remember, like, that my dad used to work at a car company somewhere in Michigan. So the police were able to find him, and yeah, he wanted to have us back. But he himself actually had all kinds of issues because he was so devastated that his wife took his children and left him, that his mother put him in the Pontiac State Mental Hospital, and he received electroconvulsive therapy, shock treatment.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, fortunately, he, ended up being able to be released. And he said it was because the psychologist or psychiatrist at that time said, and I only heard this from somebody else, that he said she told him children belong with their mother. So that's how all of this stuff, led to me really having this desire to find out more about these near-death experiences, because I could tell the adults from my childhood, they did not know how to explain it to me. Because I was asking them, well, what does it mean when you die? And they finally said, well, it's when you quit breathing. And so then I was afraid to go to sleep at night because I was
Oh,
afraid I'd forget to breathe. Anyway, so yeah, that's the whole. So I say really her death was my core experience for wanting to find out about near-death experiences, but I didn't even know what they were. And as it turned out, 40 years later, I ended up finding out my mother had a near-death experience. And
wow.
yeah, and so when I started really getting involved in IANDS, which I started going to Chicago IANDS. I had lived in Michigan. And at that time, I had been married close to 31 years, and there were still cracks in the marriage, and we were going in opposite directions. And I looked on the internet to find out about atheism because my husband was an atheist. And they said they were going to have Howard Storm. He was going to speak at Chicago IANDS. So I drove the 5 hours one way, and oh, I was hooked. I mean, because Howard started out as, I'll call it an avid atheist, and then he later became a minister after his near-death experience. Um, but yeah, so I'm trying to think if I left anything out there. That's basically how I got interested in IANDS, and then I just kept going every month to their meetings. And just to go back a little bit, like with the panic attacks, they had prescribed me a tranquilizer that they said was very mild, but that freaked me out too, because my mother had been prescribed tranquilizers in the late 50s, and they didn't know they were addictive back then.
Mm.
And then she started drinking alcohol on top of it, and then she, was dead at age 36. So yeah, I didn't feel comfortable taking them.
Mm-hmm.
So I found out there was free counseling offered at this university because I was considering going back to college. So it was only about maybe 6 months. I don't even know if it was that. And the counselor, who was a graduate student learning to be a PhD, I think what he asked me, if I recall, was, what are you most afraid of? And I realized, oh my God, I had repressed a thought that I was going to die young like my mother if I had children.
Mm.
And once I was able to bring that to my conscious awareness, the panic attacks went away. And so, that was such a blessing.
Yeah.
But so was IANDS. IANDS for me, I feel like saved my sanity. And so as I was going once a month to the Chicago IANDS, I'd hear all these near-death experiencers. And I went and asked them, I said, now, how can I feel that unconditional love? And how can I hear that divine wisdom you guys hear? And it was unanimous. They all said meditation was the key. So I started meditating. I go back to Michigan and start meditating. And one of the times after a couple months, I went back to another meeting and said, well, I'm not hearing anything, I'm not hearing any answers. And they said, well, did you ask a question? And it was like, oh, duh. You mean I have to, participate and ask a question? And so I went back to Michigan and went into meditation and asked, should I divorce? Because I'd agonized for several years over this. And because I love my husband very much, but we were going in opposite directions. And this male voice came to the left side of my head, outside of my head. And the male voice said, do you have a marriage? And
Oh,
at first I was like kind of indignant. I was like, well, yes, I've been married about 31 years. And the voice didn't argue with me. It never told me what to do. And I had to process that. And it made me realize, oh, just because I have a signed piece of paper saying I'm married doesn't mean I have a quality marriage. And we had a lot of great years and raised two sons, and so that was wonderful. And I also started receiving clairvoyant images when I would go into meditation. And one of them was two police cars. And they were like just zooming right past each other with their lights blaring, which that shows some synesthesia there because lights don't make noise.
Right.
But in meditation, I would sometimes get these synesthesia, the mix of senses. And I had to ask, there was a spiritualist church, and I found out that a lot of spiritualist ministers go into that field because they had had a near-death experience and they get opened up to mediumship. And the research shows that 56% of near-death experiencers will receive a spontaneous medium. They aren't asking for it, and they get a spontaneous mediumship message. So I went to her. She was great at the Bay City, Michigan church, Reverend Laura McLaughlin. And she could give everybody in the church a reading every Sunday. She'd give everybody a reading, but she'd be really quick about it. She'd just give you a couple of sentences kind of about where you are in your life or things to kind of spur you on to get you moving in your path. And yeah, because like I was sitting there one time in church and she was reading the person next to me, and I still wasn't quite sure what to make of all this. Is this really, a real thing? And right before she was going to read me, as she's reading this other person, I felt this energy draw come out of my third chakra. And then she gave me the reading. I was like, oh my God, that's probably how she does it. Either her spirit guides or whatever, or, going to the next person before she's done saying the first person before me. And I asked her, because on Wednesdays, most of those places will have a mediumship like course where people can practice. And so I asked her what that meant. And she said, well, one car is you, one police car is you, the other police car is your husband, and you're going 180 degrees in opposite directions. So then it was an easier decision for me as, that's what I needed to do. And then I just kept going for several years, but I started feeling these changes, like that I needed to take an early retirement from this corporation because I really didn't want to make this particular corporation richer. And I decided, okay, I'm going to take an early retirement after I divorced. And then I moved to Tucson, and I started helped co-found and co-facilitate the Tucson and Phoenix groups, IANDS groups. And that was so much fun. I mean, I just loved that. I felt like, oh, good. At least I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile for humanity to help give near-death experiencers a platform to talk about their experience and get their message out to the public. And plus, I mean, I learned a lot. And I never started a group in Michigan because I didn't have the confidence that me as a non-near-death experiencer could do that. But yet, now I find it is possible. Now I run the Durham, North Carolina IANDS group. And it's just such a blessing. I've met so many wonderful people, and they all, their NDEs have a lot of similar characteristics, but they're all unique to that person. And they oftentimes come back with gifts. Like healing, or there's a lot of after effects. I mean, they start getting psychic impressions. They may start having downloads of information. There's all kinds of things. They may get glimpses of past lives, or we have some that have glimpses of future lives, because when you get in that space like they were in a near-death experience, there is no time. You're just in the now. Everything's happening all at once. And anyways, I just feel like near-death experiencers have so much that the general public can listen to and learn from. A lot of wisdom there. And actually, one of our co-founders, Dr. Kenneth Ring, He called it the benign virus, and that non-near-death experiencers can catch, like he said he caught, as he would listen to near-death experiencers tell their experience. He felt like he started to have some of their similar after effects, like he lost his fear of death and he started becoming more altruistic. He wanted to help humanity and not just worry about his own materialistic issues. And, there's several other after effects too, but yeah, that was wonderful. So now I realize, okay, so I'm a benign virus person. but also I'm called spiritually transformative experiencer, an STEer, as we do all these acronyms. And yeah, because I feel like I changed and that's the qualification, or what would I say, the indicators of how much has the person changed their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I totally changed my life from that point. And hopefully I'm still changing and progressing in ways. And meditation is still very important to me. And I still get, I'll get some precognitive things. I've also had some precognitive dreams. And I really think everybody does have these abilities, but unfortunately, I think our culture, it's just not given any value or importance. Or maybe it's because we're being raised by parents who they're just not familiar at all either. They're not as aware.
Mm-hmm.
So I really look forward to the future where more parents and children can be raised recognizing they already have these abilities. They can already do telepathy. And I look back, and my oldest son, I remember when he was either 3 or 4, he started talking about this guy, and he was talking, I don't know if he was talking to him or what. And now I look back and I think, oh my God, he was talking, that was a past life he was, checking into or whatever. So yeah, I don't know what it was.
Oh, that is amazing. And I do feel like you have telepathy because while you were talking, you answered the questions I was going to ask. So that's that's awesome. So going back to the first part of your story, and this may just be a really quick throwback to it,
Mhm.
but you said you heard your mother's voice.
Mm.
When you heard your mother's voice, did you realize that she was actually calling to you, or did you have one of those, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy moments?
I thought I was going crazy because I mean, I knew my dad had been in a mental institution for a while, and I thought, oh my God, maybe I've somehow got some of that. And then my mother here, she had been on tranquilizers, but she had just a really terrible childhood. Grew up in the Dust Bowl days. They lost the farm. She was the
Mm.
oldest of like 10 or 9 kids, and yeah, it just not a fun childhood.
At what point did you realize that maybe she actually was calling you, or did you ever come to that
It,
realization?
yeah, I eventually did. It's like, oh, duh, another duh moment. But yeah, it took me several years. It took me several years and a lot of learning about near-death experiences and learning from that spiritualist minister some. And yeah, it took me a while, but boy, once you're there, it's like, oh my God, it feels like you understand how the world works better, or this system that we're in, you feel like you can understand it better. And I feel like I'm not as fearful about the future and things like that, even though I know a lot of people have been really distraught, by what's
Hmm.
going on in the world right now. And I just feel like a lot of NDEers, they'll say, everything is working out. It's kind of like, which perspective level are we going to be at? Are we going to be at the human being level, which is lower, or are we going to go up higher to maybe our guides level or an angel's level? And you can keep going up. Well, And if you think there is an omniscient God level, well, wow, what a whole different viewpoint that's going to have compared to our human being level. And
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like when you have children, your children may see things at a certain viewpoint when they're just little, and things may seem horrible to them that they have to do, but yet, yeah, now that they're older, they can appreciate, oh, okay, that was worth it, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. The homework that you didn't want to do
Yes,
because you'd
yeah.
rather play outside. A lot of us are
Yeah.
still like that as adults, just bigger issues instead of math.
Yeah, it's like I have to laugh. Natalie Sudman, an NDEer who she had gone to Iraq as like a civil engineer type person. And I think her friends encouraged her, like, oh, it'll be fun. And what happened was, as she's in this convoy, train of vehicles, I mean, she'd been working there, I don't know if it's like a year and a half or something in Iraq. And they were like doing rebuilding and stuff like that. And as she's traveling in this convoy vehicle, an IUD device, or IED, I'm trying to remember which the right acronyms. Yeah, device exploded underneath the vehicle. And, she called it the blink environment. All of a sudden, she felt like she just blanked. I mean, because she had been kind of falling asleep as the driver is driving the vehicle. And, she had
Mhm.
her arm on the side of the door there. And all of a sudden, next she blinks and she's standing on this stage, like I think it was 10 feet by 20 feet. And there's a whole, like just so many beings. It was almost like a stadium. And they were all expressing admiration to her. And she felt like, what? I'm here in my bloodied camouflage. She called them camis, and she felt like, what, I was just doing my job. And yet they were just, yeah, they were just so grateful, expressing all this love to her. And anyways, yeah, and so she had a lot of important elements too, like when she was coming back into her body after she had gone like to a healing environment. I think she called it R&R, rest and rejuvenation or something. And they were even joking with her. They said, well, how do you want to go back? Like what ailments do you want to go back with? And she was even, she had trouble with her eye, and she thought, oh yeah, it could be interesting going back with just one eye, and her wrist. And but in that environment, because they look at it a whole different perspective, they were actually laughing about some of these. Oh, would she want to experience this, or would she want to experience that? So anyway, she did come back with a few ailments and PTSD that she wanted to try to help to learn veterans to help them. But yeah, as she's starting to come back into her body, she said the whole scene was like frozen, like it's still. It was like everything was stopped, almost like in a movie, how you can stop it at any point and you see everything stay. So all the people were not moving and all that. And then when she got back in her body, then it's back to normal. I mean, it's just so fascinating.
That is that's a very unique story to me. I haven't heard nearly as many stories as you have, but I've never heard
Um,
about the um being on a stage. Like
oh yeah.
that's a little mind-blowing to me, probably because of a dream I've had. But it sounded kind of familiar actually. Um, but yeah, the that's the whole thing about the indie experiencer's perspective, um, is how much has changed. And I wish that everybody could understand that this planet, this well, the planet may be forever, but the our life, our time on this planet is not forever. And it just helps you figure out, okay, what is really more important? So like the little day-to-day annoyances really are not that important, but taking care of your loved ones is important. There's just the whole, and the lack of fear of death is also like you live better if you're not afraid of dying.
Yeah, you can live life more fully. Because, yeah, I felt like before when I was so scared of dying, uh, that, yeah, I kept limiting myself because, oh, that's not safe. Ooh, that's not safe. And yeah, it's so much more enjoyable. And, the other things too is, yeah, they become less materialistic, not as concerned about money. And they put more emphasis on service to others. They're more loving and compassionate, and they'll become more spiritual, but less dogmatically religious.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a greater self acceptance, I think, a self love for themselves that, um, I think a lot of our public is craving, to feel much more confident, and that they're okay as they are, they're perfect as they are, and that kind of thing. So, yeah. But I did want to mention, yeah, she wrote a book, Natalie did, and it's called Application of Impossible Things. And she didn't wait very long after writing it. And yeah, I don't know. To me, it's almost like I would read about 2.5 pages and then I felt like, oh, wow, I really have to process what she's saying. So it seems like she wrote it in a way to help us kind of move us along a little bit. But yeah.
I think
And yes,
that's,
oh, go
I
ahead.
was going to say that's another thing I hear from experiencers is they come back with a lot of them, not all of them, but they'll come
Mhm.
back with more of a sense of purpose, or maybe they don't know exactly why they're still here, but they know that there's something bigger they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. hmm Um, and yeah, there's just so many experiences. Like the one that really I still think about a lot is May Hewlett. And she was 22 years old. She's with her cousin James and a friend from India, Rashad, and they're cutting fodder, corn fodder, or whatever, in this field, because she lived on a farm. And as they're cutting, one was up on the truck and then holding one of her arms or hands, and then she's reaching down off the truck to help her cousin James, who was unhooking the metal gate when lightning struck the gate, and it
Ooh.
went through all three of them. So all three crossed over at the same time, which I just feel like it tells us so much about near death experiences. So they all cross over, and she's feeling like, wow, this is a very masculine like environment. It was like a big stone room they were in. She couldn't even see the top of the ceiling because it seemed like it was kind of gloomy and dark. And but she sees her other two, with her, the cousin and the friend, and she's realizing, oh, she's also picking up on what they're seeing, and they felt it was like a King Arthur's castle. So, they start to go, and then they eventually see that there's a light opening at this other end. So they all three start going there, and they go through, and it's this beautiful valley, and there's mountains in the background, and they see a brighter light that starts to kind of take some form at the back of there. And she sees it as a Viking Valkyrie woman who she realizes, because her family was more matriarchal,
Mhm.
and that this Viking Valkyrie woman has been helping her family for generations, and especially the women. And then her cousin sees his deceased father, who's all dressed up in his naval uniform, and then the East Indian friend, he's seeing it as if this is Buddha. So, but yet they all knew what each other was seeing at the same time. And it just tells us how connected we are. And that's the one thing that usually most NDEs realize is we're all one. We're all connected to the one. And
Did
but
all
yeah.
did all three come back?
So they did all three come back. I mean,
Okay.
there was more to their experience, like Rashad was told it was his time to die. But he said, well, then why are these other two with me? Why is May and James with me? And he was told that it was because they loved him so much that they wanted to help escort him across. But yes, they all ended up coming back. Excuse me. And actually, Rashad didn't die for, I think it was 2 more years, but he ended up going back to India, kind of, finalizing his family affairs. And then he became an ascetic like monk. That apparently that's more common in India.
Okay.
And he would just travel around, until he died. But the other two knew exactly when he died because they were so connected still, even though
Wow.
they're continents apart. And then James, he was also told that he was going to die, but not as soon as Rashad. And he died, I think, 3 years later, because when they were checking them out from the lightning strike, like medically after their experience, they found that he had a brain tumor. So that's what he died of. And then May lived for several decades after. But yeah, I just found that fascinating.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I want to use the word incredible, but then I don't want to be incredulous like this. It's so
Yeah.
like it's just amazing.
Uh-huh.
Um, okay, so tell me a little bit more about IANDS meetings. Like
Okay.
what would if somebody just came to a meeting, say they're either super curious like you were, or they
Mhm.
have experienced near death moment. Like, what can they expect if they come to a meeting?
Mhm. Well, and it depends because we have a lot of different groups all around the United States and some in other countries. And we have, since COVID, we have a lot of online groups too. So people can just join. They just have to create an email, put in their email and create a password. But the sharing groups are free online. And I think they usually last an hour and a half. And they just need to sign up to whichever one they want. And we have some theme groups too. So there they could enter online and they can share if they want. They don't have to, but others are there to share too. So they do try to give everybody a chance to, share some. Then the on the ground groups like mine, yeah, anybody's welcome. I guess that's the only downside to us having near death in our, organization's title, our
Mhm.
nonprofit's title, because I've heard several people feel like, well, I haven't had a near death. Can I come? Oh, definitely, because that's the boat I was in. And yeah, anybody's free to come. And besides, I think spiritually transformative or out of body experiences, Kundalini experiences, I mean, a lot of them are going to find there is a lot of similarity. Yeah, a lot of similarities to their experiences or after effects or um, and then we have an annual, oh, so yeah, so they came to my on the ground group. Yeah, I try to have a speaker every month, but since COVID, a lot of times there I have to Zoom them in.
Mhm.
And yeah, they can either listen to the speaker for usually about an hour, and then they can ask questions afterwards. And the benefit of an on-ground group is then they can go up and ask the experiencer after, some of their burning questions that they've
Right.
always wanted to know. I mean, they can ask them in the sharing groups too, some, but yeah, and then we have our annual conference. The annual conference this year, it's going to be in Chicago, and we try to move it around the United States every year to reach more NDEers. And yeah, that is great. That is like a 4-day conference. And we also have an earlier day, a fifth day that's workshops for anybody that wants to go. But those are extra cost. And yeah, it's going to be in Chicago, actually Oak Brook near Chicago, and 4 days of talks, hearing from experiencers. And we usually have several different tracks going on at the same time. Like a lot of times we'll have 3 different speaking tracks. So that's a lot of, talks to hear. And why most people if they come to the conference, they still can't hear them all because, they can't be in 3 rooms at the same time.
Right.
So we do have the recordings are given to them after the conference. And, but, to be in that energy of several hundred experiencers. I've had, like at our last conference, I had so many people come up to me and say, I don't want to go home, because the energy is so high. They kind
Yeah.
of don't want to go back to their reality, their old life there. But yeah, anyways, it was great. And since, well, we had a Netflix special called Surviving Death several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that really created a lot. Plus COVID. COVID actually created a lot of people coming and calling us because, yeah, they were scared and they really wanted to know what does happen afterwards. Also, people will call like near-death experiencers who feel so alone. They feel so isolated because they don't feel like they can talk to their family. Their family feels like their experience is too far out there for them. They don't
Mm-hmm.
understand it because they haven't had one. And yeah, it's just very helpful for them to come to our conferences or go to the online sharing groups or on ground, because there they have a lot of people they can talk to and who understand what they've gone through. And yeah, it's very helpful. And they feel, because I've had several calls, well, they're calling and they feel like they're going crazy because nobody else seems to, be having this, or they can read other people's thoughts. And it's really a weight on their shoulders because they don't want to be able to, they're not trying to interfere in anybody else's life, but they're so opened up
Mm-hmm.
that they just have those abilities and stuff. And so sometimes after, if it's soon after an experience, they may avoid getting into too many public settings just because there's so many people and it's hard to deal with everybody's thoughts and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
When is the conference this year?
We always try to do it over Labor Day weekend. So
Okay.
it's August 27th through August 31st. And yeah, it's wonderful. And we do have like some of the NDEs, come back with healing gifts. And so we do have healers. Well, we call them energy healers and talk healers. And so the energy healers, you can schedule, like it's only, I think it's $20 for or maybe it's $18 for a 20-minute session. I have to look at the new prices, but yeah, so you could sign up for several 20-minute sessions, like with different healers, and try that out. So yeah, the talk healers, they may be doing mediumship, they may be doing like psychotherapy if that's their thing, all different kinds of things. And then the energy healers, yeah, they're more doing similar to Reiki,
Mm-hmm.
energy healing, or different things. Like last year, I went to a woman who she does voice. She does voice things, and she called it light language that she was pulling in.
Okay.
And
I just
so,
recently interviewed someone who does that. So that's
oh,
the only
okay.
reason I even know what that is.
Yeah, so I mean, it's fascinating. There's so many different types that I know I'm not doing it justice right now.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah.
okay. It's all sounds very interesting, and I'm hoping that somebody who's listening will go to the conference and
Hmm.
have some amazing experiences.
Yeah.
Um, how tell me about your book.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this was interesting. I have never written a book before, and I I kept feeling like I was getting these nudges from some NDEs that had passed, and one in particular. And I just was feeling like, oh my God, I am not worthy to be, writing this or writing a book. And I mean, well, I love the subject and I feel like I have, learned so much from them. But yeah, and and so then I went to somebody else, like I went to a medium that I trusted, and I don't even know if I asked her, and she said, "Oh, I see you're supposed to write a book and you're supposed to have it ready for sale at the conference." And I'm thinking, really? Uh, but yeah, so I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to find the time? Because we were already starting to, gear up for our next conference last year. And yeah, so I figured, okay, I asked the literary agent who does a lot of these types of books, and I said, God, how am I going to do this? And she said, a lot of her like spiritual authors, they wake up at about 4 a.m., really early in the morning, and then they just start, typing or whatever, and feel like, they connect and have the information come through them. So, yeah, I would wake up anywhere from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. and I would start writing. And that's what I did for, God, several months. Because I started like mid-January, and we were told we had to have it done by July 15th. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Wow.
It was, yeah.
That
And then
takes some
halfway,
discipline.
oh my gosh, yeah. Sometimes I wonder, oh, I don't know how healthy that was. But yeah, I would get energized, just thinking about, oh my God, I want to put this one in and with this. And actually there were so many more that I wanted to put in here, but she did end up recommending an editor halfway through, and so he was at least good about saying, no, I don't, no, no, that'll be book two. Well, and so, yeah, then I did hear that after I got another reading not too long ago, and they said, oh, I see you're going to write 2 more books. And I laughed. I'm like, oh, yeah, right. And the very next day, a professor called me, and he said he has some information from May Hewlett that he was given, and he considered writing a book on it, but she's now passed, and he just decided not to. So he sent me that information, and so I've been going through it some, and yeah, we'll see.
So there is another. And the current book is NDEs Unveiled, an insider's look into the mysteries of near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And where can people buy that?
Oh, Amazon. And I want to say all of my proceeds I'm giving back to IANDS, because I'm going to get choked up at this part, but I am so grateful to near-death experiencers to open themselves up and to share their most vulnerable moments. And, they're not, I don't know. I just get so choked up because that's pretty hard to do. Um, yeah. So anyways, I'm just so grateful for them, because I feel like they help save my sanity. And yeah, I feel like they can really help us move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all about love, unconditional love, that's the key. And they come back realizing, they felt that unconditional love. And yeah, to go to one of our conferences, and where so many hundreds of NDEs are trying to emulate to others that unconditional love, it's just like, oh my God, this is what the world could be like. Yeah. So, and hopefully everybody takes that back to their homes when they leave, and tries to do the best. And that's what I'm hoping to do with this book, is help people realize there's so much wisdom in these NDEs, and they can help people's lives.
I love that. And I totally get it. And I almost got choked up with you, so I'm trying not to think too hard right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So Amazon, I'm trying to make sure I have everything covered before I let you get back to your day. So we've got the book, we've got Amazon, we have the conference. I'm going to link to Ian's website.
Yeah, for the conference, we do sort of have a separate website. It's called conference.ians.org. So you just put the word conference and a dot before our regular website, IANDS.org.
Okay.
And the on the ground, or I mean, the online groups, that is ISGO dot before IANDS.org. So isgo.iands.org.
Okay.
And, they can always call the office here, because we often talk to experiencers and we have family members that call too, because now that a lot of YouTubes are out there, I've had some spouses call and say, oh my God, I know that my spouse had a near-death experience, but it's kind of like the spouse doesn't want to hear it at that point.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so they're dealing with that. So we can offer support and information. Yeah, it's wonderful.
I am so grateful that you came on. I know I said this at the beginning, but I really mean it. So I say it over and over. That's one of those things I do. But I am so grateful that you took time out of your day. Like, it is the middle of a Wednesday afternoon, and we're able to come on and share all of these experiences and share your story, because you shared a lot of personal information too. And I just want the listener to understand that, like you said, you don't have to be a near-death experiencer
Mhm.
to feel the benefits. You just have to open
Yes.
yourself up to listening to the near-death experiencers.
Mhm.
And so,
And one, oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say, yeah, one experiencer, I was talking to him, his name is Dave Bennett, and he drowned, and his experience is amazing too. He was actually, Morgan Freeman had him on his special that he had for a while, telling his experience. But I asked him, I said, oh, it feels like there's an energy that comes, through your voice. And he said, yeah. He said he feels like his heart chakra opens up and it just, it comes through. So I definitely feel that's the case.
That is so awesome. Thank you again.
Oh, okay. Thank you for this opportunity. And I hope to see you in Durham sometime. We'll have to meet sometime for lunch or whatever.
Definitely. I occasionally do come out to the Ryan Research Center, and I think I've seen you in the office there because you share the same building. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I think I've seen you there, but I didn't know who you were. So I hadn't actually talked to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm definitely interested in meeting you in person and just
Okay.
continuing the conversation and
Oh,
sharing.
yeah. Oh my
So
gosh, I know. I wish I had hours to tell all these fascinating experiences. Yeah. And the spontaneous healings that some of them came back with, like Anita
oh my
Marjani.
gosh.
Yeah. It's just, there's so much hope for people in these experiences. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again to Susan for sharing her story, and thanks to you for listening, especially if you stuck with me through 100 episodes. If you are interested in sharing your own paranormal experiences, or if you have an idea for an episode topic, please reach out through the contact form at peeppodcast.com. That's PEEP podcast.com. Remember, that stands for People Experiencing Everyday Paranormal. While you're there, subscribe to my newsletter to keep up with the podcast and all my creative and energetic endeavors. I usually only email it once a month. You'll receive briefs on recent episodes, information on any upcoming appearances, plus some occasional fun extras, like this month's book giveaway. If you enjoy the podcast, please give it some rating love on your favorite podcast app, share it with friends, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Ratings, reviews, and shares help platforms like Apple Podcast and Spotify know it's worthy of surfacing to new listeners. As we build our audience, we have more chances to hear their paranormal stories. A huge thank you to everyone who's given the show some love. You are helping it grow. No matter how you support the show, listening, telling others about it, or any other way, I absolutely appreciate your being here. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe and be well.